Well, hey folks, welcome to Solar Cabin Channel. One of the questions that I get asked a lot is how do you run your fridge and freezer off grid? Well, there's a number of different ways you can do that. And I've learned them because over 20 years I've tried just about all of them. Back when I first started out, it was really difficult to run any of the fridges that were available back then, unless you went with like a propane fridge, because they just used too much power for a small system. And solar was really expensive back then. It's a lot cheaper now. They also didn't have power stations like I'm going to show you here back then. So we were running off of deep cycle batteries. And if you tried to run any of those big fridges off a deep cycle battery, it'd pretty much drain them by, halfway through the night and you could lose your food. So it was really difficult when I started out going off grid to run a fridge. Now, about 5 years ago, I got this fridge here. This is an EdgeStar, which is an Energy Star efficient fridge. However, even then, I was still using deep cycle batteries, and it was still just too much draw on my system because in our wintertime, it can zap your batteries down, especially those deep cycle batteries. I would lose 50% of my charge just from the cold temperatures outside. And so it was very difficult, and I ended up not using this fridge for a long time with those deep cycle batteries. But they have now come out with LiFePO4, which is a lithium iron phosphate battery. And so you have a lot more options, and you also have better fridges, the Energy Star fridges, and I'll show you a couple of other types of fridges you might be interested in. But you can now run these fridges very well off of just a small system. Now, when I'm talking small system, my entire system is only 1 kilowatt, but the system that I'm running this fridge off of is only 400 watts. And you could actually run it off of less than that, but I have other appliances connected to that. Like right now, I'm running my laptop, I have my water pump, my lights, all connected to that 400 watt system. So it's not just the fridge. You don't need 400 watts just to run the fridge. In fact, you can run a fridge like this off of probably 100 watts and a 100 amp hour battery if you get really good sun. Now, I would recommend probably 200 watts and a 200 amp hour LiFePO4 battery if you want to run it off of a battery. And I'll show you what a battery looks like. Okay, so this is a 200 amp hour, 12 volt LiFePO4 battery. This one's made by AmperTime. I've been very pleased with their batteries, by the way. And you can easily run a fridge like this for about 3 to 4 days just off of the capacity, without any charging going into it, just off the capacity of a 200 amp hour battery. Now, if you add solar to it, and I would recommend about 200 watts up to 400 watts would be a good system to charge these batteries up in about a 5 hours to 6 hours of sunlight. You'll recharge it with about a 200 watt system. I would recommend 400 watts so you can recharge up a little bit faster, run some other appliances, which we'll talk about. But this is, you can see these batteries, they're completely sealed. They are designed to be kept inside, should not be used below freezing temperatures. But you can get these batteries now, and you can just hook up your inverter and your solar panels and your charge controller and run one of these fridges off of that. But there is a simpler system for people that don't want to have to deal with a big battery and separate components, which is what I'm going to show you right now. Okay, if you don't want to deal with that big battery and a bunch of separate components, then what you can get is a power station. Now these, again, were not available when I was going off grid, or I would have loved to have one because they're excellent units. Now this unit is the Geniverse Pro 2, and it is 2.4 kilowatts of storage capacity. Now to explain that to you, this has the same capacity and is a LiFePO4 battery as that 200 amp hour battery that I just showed you. Almost identical in capacity. Okay, now this is I think a 36 volt system. Those are 12 volt systems, but they're the same capacity in batteries. This also has a built-in 2200 watt inverter with a 4400 watt peak, so it has a really big inverter that can handle lots of big appliances. The fridge isn't a really big appliance; it's only about 80 watts. But it'll handle microwaves and washing machines and your air conditioner. You can run all of that off of this unit right here. This is 2.4 kilowatts, so it has a lot of capacity. This unit alone, just this unit, even if it's not being charged from outside sources, this will run this fridge for about 3 days, okay? Probably even longer than that, but about 3 days, just off the capacity that's in this Geniverse Pro 2. Now, I am using this as a backup, and this is something you want to consider. Even if you live on grid, if you have a power outage or blackout, you could use this to run a fridge like this for a good 3 days to get you through a power blackout. Now that's really important because a lot of people, besides having your food in your fridge that you don't want to spoil in a blackout, you may also have medications. A lot of people have insulin and other medications that they need to keep cold, and they're keeping in a fridge. So this unit right here would keep your medicines and your food and things that you don't want to spoil running for about 3 days in a blackout. And most blackouts generally are resolved within about 3 days. Some of them shorter, some of them longer, but you're going to get about 3 days. Now, this unit is also designed so that you can plug solar panels right into it. Geniverse has their own solar panels that they provide, which are 200-watt solar panels, and you can get up to 800 watts to charge this unit. Or you could use your own solar panels. I'm using my own 400-watt system, which I'll show you. And you can use that to charge up this system. And 400 watts will recharge this in about 8 to 10 hours. Will completely recharge this unit. And while you're doing that, you're also running your fridge. And I want to make sure that you understand that. The fridge is running. It's running through the power station, but the power station is also being charged up from my solar panels right now. And so actually, and I'll just look at this right here, it says that the fridge, even though it says it's an 80-watt fridge, once if you keep it full and you're in a fairly cool location, like this is in my kitchen, away from my stove, in a fairly cool location, it's actually only using about 60 watts. And right now, my solar power, it's a lousy day here. It's not very clear. We've got a storm coming in, but my main system is already full from my 400 watts, and this is actually pulling in right now. It's pulling in 75 watts. Now that's excess power from my 400-watt system. My 400-watt system is producing more than that, and I'm actually running my laptop and some other appliances off this right now. So the Geniverse is pulling in about 70 watts of excess power. Now when I mean excess power, that's just free power. If I didn't use it, the solar panels would just stop producing because the charge controller would say, okay, there's no place to put this power, so it would just shut them down, and so there wouldn't be any power coming in. Well, why not use that? It's completely free power. So I'm using that extra 70 watts to power the fridge, which is running at about 60 watts, and it's putting 10% of that back into the Geniverse to keep it charged up. So in a good sunny day, especially in summertime like that, this will run the fridge. This Geniverse unit will run the fridge, and my 400-watt solar panels will also recharge this Geniverse all the way up. And then I use this also for running my microwave, for running my inductive cooktop, for running my hot water kettle. I use this in my kitchen. It's basically my kitchen power system. And it can be used for all kinds of other uses. You can use this for running a CPAP machine, an oxygen machine, anything like that. So these fridges will run really great off of a power station like this. Now, just to show you and give you some tips about your fridge, my fridge, now hopefully you'll be able to see in here, I've got my fridge, and it is right now, I've been cooling this down, so it says it's only 38 degrees. It will reach 34 degrees real soon. But you can see this is a 3.1 cubic liter fridge with the freezer on top, and it has the crisper on bottom, the shelves. And I've got 2 pounds of hamburger and a bunch of chicken patties and things like that in my fridge. It holds a lot. Plus, it's got the door, which you probably really can't see. But I've got my milk cartons and my soda. It's got a place for soda drinks and all that sort of stuff in the fridge. So this is a good size fridge unit, these 3.1s, to have in an off-grid house, or that a lot of people have them in their apartments. You may have one in your house as a backup. A lot of people use them as a bar fridge, that sort of thing. But they hold a lot of food. You can get a lot of food in here. And it has a really nice freezer unit. And it has a decent sized freezer unit. And I've got like 8 TV dinners and a lasagna, a great big 5-pack lasagna. And I've got some waffles. And then over here in the door, I've got some more meats and burritos and things like that. This is a good sized freezer for a few days worth of use. And I store a lot of food up there that I'm just going to eat on because I'm a single guy, and so I throw stuff in the microwave like a lot of people do. So I have TV dinners and things like that. But one of my main uses for this in summertime is I like to have ice cream, and I can put a whole quart of ice cream up in there, and keep that in my freezer. Now this has good space. It says it uses 80 watts. I found that if you keep it full and you have it in a cool location, it will probably use more like about 60 watts of power. This will run for a good 3 days off of this Geneverse unit. Now, if you want to use a different power station, you can. Just be aware that you need to have enough power capacity to last you for as long as as long as you expect to have a power blackout. They make power stations that are, Geneverse has power stations that are smaller than this, that have about half the capacity. Those would work for maybe a day or two blackout. If you're worried that you might have a longer blackout, or if you're going to be running more appliances like microwaves and washing machines, things like that, then I would consider getting the Pro 2 unit, which has twice the capacity, as much capacity as one of those great big batteries. All right, couple other things that you may be interested in. Now, this unit I've done reviews of on my channel before. This is the Alpicool C20 fridge. This is what I have been using instead of this because it only uses 45 watts, but it is small capacity. This does not have a lot of capacity. It also doesn't have a separate fridge and freezer, so I can't keep ice cream frozen in this without freezing all the rest of my food. And so these are great units for camping. They will work for an off-grid cabin. They only use about 45 watts. You can run them off a power station or a small solar power system, and they're a good way to start, especially if you have like a recreation cabin and you just want to take your fridge and freezer along with you when you go and run it off of a power station. These are great fridges, and Alpicool's a really good brand. I've had this one for 3 years. It's run excellent and no problems at all. You can get these freezers like this. These will run off 110 volt, 240 volt, or 12 volt, or 24 volt. So they're really universal. I ran it off my 12 volt battery and off my solar power system, and this here would run 6 days off of that 200 amp hour battery, no problem. Okay, and because of the way they're designed, they use a Danfoss type compressor. They only kick on for a few minutes every hour. And so they don't, and because they're built like a chest with the top that opens at the top, it keeps the cold down inside. Whereas a fridge like this that has a door that opens up, every time you open that door up, the cold air falls out. So they tend to use more power than a unit like this is built like a chest freezer. So now, while we're talking about chest freezer, you can also get a small chest freezer, and like a 3.1 cubic foot chest freezer, which would be the same size as this fridge, but it opens up the top. You can get those, and you can also run them off the Geneverse with just a solar panel, okay? So if you want to run a freezer, a chest freezer, because you've got all your meat froze in it, you want to keep it froze, you could get like a 200 watt solar panel and something like this Geneverse, and you could keep that running all the time and not worry in a blackout that all your meat, which is really expensive, that all your meat is going to unthaw and you're going to lose all your meat. So in a power emergency, it would use for that. Now, with the solar panels attached to it, you can also just run it for free. Okay, and I want to emphasize that if you have a 200 watt solar panel and you have one of these power stations, or a 200 amp hour battery and a setup with all the different components, you can run a fridge, or you can run a chest freezer, and you can run them completely for free. So you're not going to be using your grid power at all using this system, because it's just using the sun power during the daytime, recharging the Geneverse and running your fridge. And then at nighttime, the fridge will run straight off the Geneverse. And then in the daytime, as soon as the sun comes up, the Geneverse will charge back up. So great system. That is how a lot of off-gridders like me now are using fridges and chest freezers and these power stations, or a LifePo 4 battery for running our fridges and freezers and keeping our food fresh in our off-grid cabins. But a lot of people are also setting up these systems for an emergency blackout, and a really good idea to have a system that you could run, at least keep your fridge running, maybe run a few small cooking appliances in a blackout so that you can feed your family. All right, folks, I hope this video was interesting. Have a great day.